Hi, welcome to Because. I'm your host, Mark Zyla. On this episode of Because, we hear the becauses of composer William Campbell. William is a pianist and award-winning composer of music for all genres. Campbell's music for film includes work nominated for 2 Oscars and an Emmy nomination. His recent scores have earned the awards for Best Film Score by the Iowa Motion Pictures Association and Best Original Score at the 2021 Luminous Frames Festival. Additional awards include those from ASCAP, Kennedy Center American Collegiate Theater Festival, Penfield Music Commission, Waging Peace, and multiple teaching institutions. His most recent album of solo piano music, All in Due Time, was released in 2021 to critical acclaim and may be streamed on all major sources. He is also a sought-after composer for orchestral, chamber, and vocal music, and is regularly commissioned to write new works by various organizations every year. A passionate educator, he is a professor of music at St. Ambrose University, teaching all aspects of music theory and composition, as well as courses that lead to greater cultural understanding through music. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Bill.
Thanks for the invite, Mark. It's good to be here.
Been looking forward to it for a while now.
Nice.
So let's start off today, and let's get a picture of what young life was like for Bill. Where are you from, and you know what's the family picture like in that sense?
Yeah. So, young Billy, as I was known then. I born in Atlanta. My dad was a physician. He's retired now, but he was in the Army. So we moved from Atlanta to Hawaii, and then Hawaii to San Antonio, Texas, and then from San Antonio to Tucson, Arizona. So it's me, and then my sister, and then my brother, and we're 2 years apart. And my mom and dad met at Emory. My mom studied to be a nurse. My dad's a physician, and so he really wonderful guy. Was one of my first heroes and still is. And he and my mom supported everything that any of us wanted to do, unless it was wrong, and then we knew.
They did parent.
They did parent, exactly. Thank goodness.
There's no telling where Billy might be today.
Exactly. I'd still be called Billy for number one, right? We don't want that. Right. But so I basically really grew up in Tucson. So we spent those were like the early years, and I remember some of it, but all the foundational stuff happened in Tucson. Right. However, before we moved to Tucson, they did get an upright piano, and it was wheeled into the a brand new Kawai upright piano wheeled into the living room. It was a sunken living room because this was the 70s.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Those were really cool living rooms.
They were at the time.
I mean, you've been to my house. I kind of have that, but it's like a room in the back.
Yeah.
That exactly. You do step down into.
Yeah. That's like the fun room. That's Yeah, but these living rooms, these sunken living rooms. So I started taking piano, and it was, pretty basic, big note music, but I went every week and I practiced, and I was 6.
So did either of your parents have musical backgrounds?
Yeah. So my mom took piano lessons and even organ lessons, sang in choirs, and until fairly recently, I think she sang in choirs too. My dad came from a pretty musical family, folk music. So his mom played instruments, just a year before she died, just a few years ago. So she played like banjo and mandolin and no guitar. She had a ukulele, but she loved playing like banjo especially. That was her thing. And she would sing along when she's playing these songs that she loved. Her dad played fiddle, and it was this old time Upper Appalachian like upstate New York style of fiddling.
Mm-hmm.
And one time, for a couple days, Library of Congress came out and recorded him playing. So, because he played it in a certain way, and nobody else did it exactly that way anymore. So that's kind of cool. So, yeah, both sides, definitely some music, but nobody was like a professional horn player like your dad, right? I mean,
that is somewhat of a the family business in my house.
Yeah, it is, and that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my parents, they got the piano because they thought that music was important and that they wanted the kids to learn piano growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they ever thought that any of us would turn out to be musicians. I don't think that was necessarily the goal,
right?
But it wasn't. I think they're pretty happy with the way things turned out. I think it's okay. But yeah, the piano, it was there, and I actually really loved playing it. I did. My my pinkies were up when I would play. There's some pictures of me when I was young, and the pinkies
Very high
were
class
up.
of you.
Very high class, man. Fancy piano, always. But that sort of got under control. But I mean, even now, I see some pictures, and the pinkies are still up. It's like there's still these little things, and it's just the way the body wants to be at an instrument, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know.
I've got when it comes to horn playing, a thing that several teachers had mentioned is I have flying fingers, which is not keeping your fingers on the levers themselves, but doing this.
Yes.
Or like, it's an audio-only format, and I'm sitting here like this. But, what I'm doing is flapping my fingers as if I'm pressing
they look like
valves.
Wings of a bird or
Exactly.
something. So, yeah.
And that has become actually a cornerstone of the things I try to be like, avoid with my students. It's like, do not develop this habit. Right. It's really hard to break.
There are things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about so this piano is coming into your house, but what was music something that your family enjoyed together before that time?
Oh, well, now I was 6.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was 4. My brother was 2. I remember some stuff, but my parents listened and would sing along to a lot of music. They listened to a lot of music and would sing along.
Were there some hits in that list?
Oh, for sure. Well, it was folk music and Beatles, things like that.
Very good.
But a lot of classical music. My dad would listen to a lot of classical stuff. And the classical stuff that he loved and that I really grew up listening to were like the great orchestrators, the great symphonists, especially from the Russian tradition. I mean, I don't know how many people knew Rimsky-Korsakov like I did going into college. I just, what?
So much.
You don't know this? Listen to Scheherazade. It's like I was weaned on this. Come on.
Right, exactly. Well, that's cool that there's a lot of, it seems like there's breadth of music listening going on in your house. And...
Yeah, not a lot of jazz when I was growing up.
Okay.
But yes, and good sound systems. My dad had this Marantz and these nice speakers. I can't remember the brand right now, but anyway, multiple speakers. It was great. It was definitely a thing. When we got older, my dad bought a jukebox, and so we had that out in the back when we were living in Tucson. And we'd have parties, and we'd put that on. Or I'd be outside, working outside in the yard or whatever, and I'd just be playing the jukebox with all the old hits.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So let's get into Bill as the pianist. So you've got this piano. You're 6. Yeah. You're doing what I'm assuming is the big note Baldwin books.
Or Bastion or whatever it is, right? So then we moved to Tucson, and I remember taking some piano lessons, but I don't remember them being terribly, profound.
Okay.
Switched over to a new piano teacher and completely lit me up, changed my world.
Yeah, what was it about that lit you up?
His name was Alfred Del Morel, and he was a real person. 1.
Yeah.
2, he could communicate through the piano and to anyone what he was trying to get that person to be able to do it really well. And foundationally, I had to learn all the things. And I mean, like all the scales, in every variation of tempo, of variety of division of the beat, and I had to learn
that kind of stuff too.
All the different articulations at both hands and everything. And he'd say, "No, the reason that you're doing this, because I noticed that you're slacking off a little bit on this week, is this." And he'd play at a piano something, and I'd be like, "Okay." And it was a little bit of a show-off moment for him.
Right.
But it was also like, "Don't you want this?"
Yep.
And I was like, "Yeah, I do."
Very much.
And he was amazing. He taught me so much about music just by the way that he would play a phrase, right? And then he'd say, "Now you," and I would surprise him very often and do that, and then maybe my own way, and he'd be like, I just remember him, "Yes, yes, do that more."
Right. So you really found something that was working,
and it was amazing. And we had a little bit of a parting of the ways because I wanted in high school to also experience football.
Okay.
I had never played football. Football is what it is in our society. I don't watch it at all, right? But I did then a little bit.
Right.
And all the other guys were in football. So I thought, right? Not really, but
Yeah.
I grew up playing tennis and piano. I mean, what was I doing out on a football field? Well,
what did you do out on the football field? I'm dying to know.
I wanted to play wide receiver.
Okay.
But we didn't have a good quarterback to throw. And I could run, I could catch, I could do.
He just couldn't get you the ball.
Exactly. So they put me in as tight end.
Okay.
And I was 130 pounds.
So not a blocking tight end.
Oh, I had to.
I'm questioning your success rate.
I was not in the starting lineup.
Okay. You see some of these tight ends now, they're 2 feet taller and 300 pounds bigger.
Yeah, they are the beast on the. It used to be the linebackers would be the beast, and now it's the tight ends.
Yep.
And it's But so that's what I did, and he didn't like that, so he dropped me from his roster.
Okay.
But I still claim him as my primary teacher growing up, and I know that he claimed me as a pupil for a long time, and that was great. I learned to sight read using Bartók Mikrokosmos because his teacher was a Bartók student. He went to Juilliard.
So tell us a little bit about the Bartók Mikrokosmos.
Those are graded pieces, so they're really cool. There's, I think, 5 volumes, or the 5th volume is related to it. But at any rate, they're graded. So there's, 40 or whatever pieces in each level. And they start out really basic, or simple, rather. Not necessarily basic, but simple. And then they build just like any method book might, right?
Right.
But unlike any other method book, you really need to use your ear and your eyes and all your facilities to be able to sight read these things, because those little MFers, they're tough. They're tricky. They will get you. And they did. And he would do the classic thing of covering my hand so that I couldn't look down. He'd cover it with a piece of paper or something else, so I couldn't look down. And he'd cover up the measures that I was playing, so I had to learn how to read ahead.
Right.
Which my next teachers did as well to do that. So that was great. It really pushed me. But those Bartók Mikrokosmos pieces, they're based partly in folk songs of Eastern Europe, Romania, and Transylvania and all these other places that he collected these tunes in, but they were also from his own mind.
Right.
And often the left hand is doing something opposed to or contrapuntally to the left hand. And so they're working against each other, but with each other in a really cool way. And I still use those pieces for students of mine. I don't teach piano right now, but my students who are studying music theory and analysis and some of these formal things, I'll use these because they're really, again, simply laid out and nice to understand, but there's always puzzles. Why did he name it this?
Right.
Oh, you think it's this, but it's not. Keep digging. Keep going. Okay. And it's fun to take that apart and realize that major minor isn't because one hand is in major and one hand is in minor necessarily, or the way that you think it is. It's different. And the chromatic invention is another really good one that I like to study now. But I don't go back and sight read them now. That was then, right?
Yeah.
And that got me. It trained my ear. It trained me visually to be able to sight read up to a point. I mean, I'm not as great as there are some amazing piano accompanists out there, right? I'm not one of them, but it taught me a lot.
Yeah, I had this one moment where in my master's, my recital, I decided to do the Oliver Knussen Horn Concerto.
Okay.
And for
because you liked it.
I loved it. No, my teacher had recorded it, and I was obsessed with him. And still am. He's great. Bill Caballero, best horn player in the world. But the funny thing about that, as you talk about piano accompanists, I was so lucky that Bill had friends. Bill Caballero had friends. And so he got the pianist from the Pittsburgh Symphony to accompany me on my recital.
Oh, my.
And I'm not the fully formed individual that I am today. I was a little rough around the edges back then. Well, and, I been a little late with the communication on my desire to play this piece. And I remember going into a rehearsal, and Rodrigo Ojeda was the pianist. He's like, yeah, I'll take a look at the music like a day or so before our first rehearsal. And in my mind, I'm seeing this music, and it was like every bar that I'm playing is hard.
Yeah.
And every bar he's playing is probably 4 times as hard as mine.
Because it's the piano part.
And then we get into this first rehearsal, and it was one of those times where I had been doing all this preparation. I thought I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
But this guy, in that amount of time, one of the most difficult pieces of music I've ever played, and he's one of those accompanists. It's just oh yeah, boop, 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 boop. It's all right here. There you go. And I almost relied on him in the performance to keep us together.
Yes.
So anyway, I know those folks.
They are incredible.
They are. It's impressive.
It's there must be a special gift that they have. Yes, a lot of training. We know this, but still, there's something else.
Right. Absolutely.
Something else.
So let's talk about you. You're playing football. You're still
for 2 seasons. It was real brief.
Let's get you to the next step of your training. What were you thinking at this time in your life about what were next steps for you?
Well, okay. Let me try to be brief then and say a couple other little things.
Of course. So we got the time.
This piano teacher, Alfred Del Morel, he would be very nervous, and he would tell me after the recital, there's only one student that I love to hear, but I am so nervous about, and that's you, because I don't know if you're really ready or not for the recital. And I apologized, and then he said, yeah, but I don't know what that was. The beginning and the end was that Chopin prelude in F sharp, but what happened in the middle? I forgot it. Well, it sounded pretty good. He said, but I don't want you to do that again. I improvised the whole B section in a Chopin style when I was 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. I couldn't remember it at all. And it's beautiful. And I completely spaced it.
Yeah.
Completely. Mm-hmm. But I improvised through it, got through it, went back to the A section and finished the piece, and people thought it was wonderful. And I knew, and he knew, my parents knew.
That wasn't exactly what was supposed to be played.
Exactly right. But I had already been improvising. Mm-hmm. And I had even written some music. The first one that I wrote was, a year after I got going with it, so probably when I was 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. And it was called The Wanderer, and it was just simple octaves in the left hand, boom, 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 but an octave. And then and then just a simple little melody, and I wrote it out. I didn't have any staff paper, so I had to write out the 5 lines on the inside flap of Microcosmos Volume 1, right?
There are the 5 lines in your first piece.
And everything was right there, and I would bring in these things, and one time I was really happy. I brought something into him, and I said, how about this? He says, well, that's pretty good, but it's not really a composition. And he played a Rachmaninoff prelude, and I was like, oh. I thought, it's kind of a jerk move.
You're not Rachmaninoff yet, Bill. Billy.
And I mean, like, who does that to a kid? Like,
right.
Well, he did. Mm-hmm. And it was, I'm glad that he did. It was like, okay, you're not there yet.
Right.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be there, but he didn't exactly inspire me to write more music, right? I still did, though.
Okay.
So
let's take a step back for a second on that, though. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm curious about because I can only look through the lens of my life and things that have like happened or things that I've done, and some of them come from encouragement from somebody. You should try out for this. You would make a good that. You should look into this.
Sure.
But then there's another list of things where it's just like, I don't know. I just was like, one day I was like, hey, I'd kind of like to do this, and then just went out and did that.
Okay.
So with composition,
I've got 2 of those examples.
All right.
So yeah, composition. Nobody said, hey, have you ever written your own things? I would improvise around. I would go into that same teacher and be like, okay, and I would learn the passage that I was asked to learn, that week. But then I'd say, okay, this is interesting, but why didn't he do this? And then I would improvise on the motive that Beethoven would have, and I'd play, why didn't he do this or this or this? And I would turn to me and to the teacher who was next to me, and well, he didn't. Right. He didn't really have an answer.
Right.
Because he's a performer that's interpreting what's there in the page, and that's just not what he did. Mm-hmm. I have no idea where that came from, Mark. I don't know. But that's totally related to composing and improvising. Right. Why didn't you do this with that? Why, you could have done this. Why not that? I love what you did. Right. But I wonder, So
young Bill's mind sees possibilities.
Totally. And for me, it's shapes. Some people see color, and I see color too with some sounds. Really, it's combinations. Mm-hmm. But I'll see shapes. I'll see almost like geometric patterns. Mm-hmm. And that'll be that. And so I know exactly how to play that and to manipulate that at the piano and improvise around that shape, which is a collection of intervals. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, 8 years from then, and I'm learning about post-tonal theory and set theory analysis and all these things, and I'm like, yeah, of course.
Right. But it wasn't that weird.
Why not?
To you.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But okay, so then the other thing is that one day, so in Tucson, we also had a sunken living room there. Like, what
was that? A requirement for the realtor? I only want to see houses with sunken living rooms.
I don't think so. But it was.
And then you found one in the SAU Music House. Anybody that's been in there, so you can go get your.
There's another sunken living room. It's totally vibey, man. And there's your lava lamp over there in the corner.
And I used to teach my lessons in that pit.
Yes, you did. Oh dear. So this piano, this upright piano, this Kawai upright piano is in the living room in Tucson. We're living in Tucson now, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's in there, along with a stereo, a couch, and some. It's like the sitting room. It's like you'd call it the living room, but everybody actually lives in the other room, right. The family room with the TV, right? Mm-hmm. But I'd be in there in the piano, and people would be having conversations. And I'd be trying to practice. Mm-hmm. And I got sick of it. So, here's a 130-pound Bill.
Tight end.
Lifting this piano. So I lifted the piano up and pushed it into my room.
Nice. My piano.
And it was my piano. Nobody else was taking lessons.
Yeah. Wow.
Nobody said, you should do that. I was like, no. And nobody noticed it for days. And I said, anybody notice anything different about the living room? My mom... Where's you moved the piano into your room. That's why I was hearing it down there. Right. Yes. I had a room way on the other side of the house, too. Right. Because I was a teenager by then, and they were like, get thee gone. Yeah. So I was on the other side of the house, yes. Which was cool because then, like a year after that, they bought me my first synthesizer. So I had a synth, I bought an amp and a few other things and started really experimenting with that, sequencers and different things. And I would have them pretty close to the piano so that I was able to set one up and then play it on the piano and do some back and forth stuff.
So
and I really trained myself how to do like the whole like minimalist thing without really knowing what it was. My dad goes on a trip like he did pretty frequently, came back with these 2 books, and one of them was electronic and experimental music, and the other one was New Sounds by John Schaefer. And he went to a bookstore and he's like, what are they into? What are my kids into? My son is really into music and he really likes this weird stuff. And that's how I found out about John Cage when I was 15. And Pauline Oliveros and Cowell and but also like Laurie Anderson and Philip Glass and so I knew that kind of stuff, and that's how I learned about it. But you know, that was my dad, you know, doing that, and my mom was asking me to go to choir practice with her, and so I would do that, and but I'd still be riding my bike around, doing my homework. I bought a harmonica. I learned how to play blues harmonica. I forgot about a party I was invited to go to, and it was probably good. I mean, we were all underage, and there was probably some other things going on. I was learning how to play blues harp that night. Which isn't the way you're supposed to do blues harp, by the way. You're supposed to go to the club you're not supposed to get into and learn how to do it there.
Well, the funny thing about this podcast for me is that the breadth of guests I've had. I go from people I've literally never met, and the first time I meet them is in the podcast, and then there are people like you who we've been hanging out for years. And
we've hung for a while,
and like these are all stories I've not heard, but now like you make perfect sense now. So, and I hope by the end of this podcast, everybody's like, yes, I get it. So, in order to get where you are today, there had to be some further formal training.
Yeah.
So what were those decisions like? How did you kind of make that choice? You know, it's a hard decision for a lot. You know, you're trying to find the right place for you to be you. And trying to find the right teachers. What did that look like for you?
Oh man, so that's great. In high school, I thought of 3 things that I was thinking about. I was thinking about philosophy because I like to just sit around and BS with people, and that's what I thought philosophers did. Architect. I love designing things. And music, with the idea of writing music that people would use. Interestingly, I mean, an architect and a composer are fairly similar in what they do. And there are architects who are designers and builders. And there are composers who are composers and performers, right? But I didn't have the math that I needed, and I didn't love math enough to overcome my deficiencies. But I loved music enough to stay in the practice room for hours and not realize that I stunk, I needed to take a shower, and I'm hungry. Have you been there before?
Yes, I have.
Like yesterday? No, I'm kidding.
Most of my stories in that department were like when I was at Brevard Music Center over the summer, where the party ended when you had to go to rehearsal in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my.
Not a good look. Don't do that.
Yes, future musicians.
And you can also hear that complete story in the past episode of this show with David Renfro, because we both went there and both made many mistakes.
Yeah, so I really didn't know. But as a junior, I went to a summer music camp.
Okay,
right? I hadn't been to one before. My teachers had tried to impress upon me the new. But actually, from Tucson, there weren't a lot of options to get out and do some things like another. Anyway, so I went to one, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
Which one was it?
Northern Arizona University Summer Music Camp. So it was NAU up in Flagstaff, Arizona. And it was an amazing week that really transformed my ideas about what it would be like to be a musician and my place in the well, in the collection of musicians that were there.
Right.
And I did very well. I walked away with 3 or 4 awards, and it was great. Really showed me that I maybe there was something to this for me.
Right. Yeah.
And so I did look into a couple colleges and universities and schools, but I didn't have any teachers that were really like, this is what you're into. Here's some people that you could go study with. I applied to a few places, got into the University of Arizona, which is in Tucson. My dad's, like I said, he's a physician. He's also a prof in the medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to go for free. Right?
Much like employees here at Augustana.
Which is cool,
Yeah, that's great.
And there was this guy named Robert Muszynski who is on faculty in Tucson at the University of Arizona, who was a piano-playing composer. I was like, yes, that'll be great. And he announced his retirement my first year as a freshman.
That's happened to me too.
And so that was that. Then it was a great place for me. I was able to learn a lot. I spent a lot of time, as I've already alluded to, in practice rooms, and that was in the basement of the music department,
where they generally put them.
Yeah,
there's never windows or anything like that.
No, musicians don't need that.
No, we're not plants.
Well. Yeah, and it was a pretty nice experience. I mean, the grad students would offer up some really wonderful things to me to work on because they were there. The professors are at home asleep or doing their things or abroad or doing traveling, doing whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. But the grad students, they were practicing. I was practicing, and a couple other undergrads were really digging deep. Mm-hmm. And, I studied with a good pianist while I was there, but I had a blowout on my right wrist. It was a total overuse injury. I was in a rock band. I was in a jazz band. I was practicing some really hard, more Bartok actually at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I had to give piano a break for a little while. Okay. So I just focused on composition for the rest of my studies there at the University of Arizona. And there was this guy named Dan Asia who came in and is still on faculty there at the University of Arizona, and really was wonderful. And my first mentor in the field, and taught me a lot, not just about what to do with notes on the page, but how to navigate this crazy world of music, which was cool. And we need those people,
right? Like they're our shepherds.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. He had a piece being played at Carnegie. And I was like, oh, okay. Kind of a whatever. He's like, don't you know? Like, this is, not everybody gets it.
Right.
Okay. So let me just explain to you. And then, and it was great. I mean, it was wonderful for him to tell me, how that happened. And it was a great lesson.
Right.
That went beyond the lesson that we'd already had. I mean, it was all of that.
For sure.
And that was wonderful. But then I went on to the San Francisco. Well, I took 1 year. Oh, I got married. That's right.
Love that story. Tell me about that. People love to hear about love.
Well, Michelle was an art major, and we met, and I was a music major, and it was like, okay. And I was completely taken by her. She was not taken by me. I know this might sound shocking, but I was a bit of a show off and a little bit full of myself.
I don't know if we had been in school together, if we would have gotten along, because we might have been the same person. And that's why we get along so well now.
That's right.
Loud egoist.
Check one at the door. What?
What?
Your door's not big enough for my head. Yeah. So, but yeah, she was great, and we dated and got married. She was still a student.
Mm-hmm.
We got married one spring break. I was taking my year off. And it was pretty late in that season, and I decided I really do want to do this thing. So I'd graduated, and I was working at a guitar shop and as a part-time musician at a church, and and doing some other music things as they would happen, gigs and different things. But I really wanted to just keep doing the new music thing, and so I applied and got into the San Francisco Conservatory, and they gave me a scholarship, and I went as a grad student. And it was, so we moved there to San Francisco, and it was such a great thing for us. And without her, there's no way that I would have had the strength to do that. Still today, there's no way that I'd have the strength to do half the stuff that I do. But yeah, we moved to San Francisco. I was at the conservatory. We got pregnant and had our first son, Forrest, who was born there in San Francisco, and it was great. Those were amazing years. I completely took the time off from playing piano. I didn't play piano at all because I had that injury.
Right.
But I trained doing some conducting, and I kept doing some musicianship. Oh man. Okay, here's a lesson. I went into San Francisco Conservatory. Do you remember the graduate entrance exams that you had to take for graduate school?
Yeah, for me, they always felt like that they were just to determine where I was. I never really saw them as entrance exams, but it was always for me. The struggle was like I did super well in music history in all of them.
Yes.
But then when it came to theory, everybody kind of talked about it just enough different where I was like, huh? So it was like starting over with theory each degree.
Okay. Yeah.
So what were yours like?
Well, totally aced the history and the theory for my master's degree, but did not pass the musicianship.
Weird.
And they were right to fail me. I mean, I needed that remedial. Oh man, it was so humiliating.
So what kinds of stuff was that remedial time period? What was in that?
It was really good. And because of that, I think I'm a way better teacher now, right? Because I know the pain, but I also know things that work. Right. And I know that things that don't work. And there's only a few things that work, and you've got to practice with the metronome. You just do. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be solfege and rhythms, but you still have to practice with the metronome. And if you know that you suck at that spot, stop.
Right.
Take a breath. Be real. And work those two measures over and over again and get them right. Nobody's going to do that for you. There's no magic pill. You know?
Yep. Yeah. And, now that's like the conversation that I have with parents. Where it's just like, you're not bringing your kid to me to get magic potions. You're coming to me to learn the things that you need to do on a daily basis to improve.
Exactly.
And it's like, once you understand that, you can actually get better.
Yes. So you might have within you the desire, and the desire will take you far, but it can't get you to the next real level.
Right. You have to take care of your house. Be tidy. That's what I tell my students.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Be tidy with your playing, and that means steady rhythm. That means the dynamics aren't extra credit.
Exactly.
Things like that.
Yeah, they're there for a reason. Yeah. Yeah, so I had to learn fixed do solfege real fast.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a system at the University of Arizona. That was actually something that wasn't, at the time, something that was really great about that.
Right.
But so I had to learn some stuff really fast. The next year, I was the TA for musicianship. So what I would do, I would get on the there's some good public transit in San Francisco, and I would get on the train or the bus or whatever, and I would practice my solfege.
Yep.
If there's some crazy dude up there talking about something else, that's fine. I'm back here, the crazy dude, solfeging away.
Well, and it's funny because even when I tell my students about finding those little things that work for you to improve these skills, I can give you ideas, but you have to try them and find the one. And for me, it is always striking to remember how I fixed my rhythm, or how I really started to make internal pulse a thing that I focused on and wanted to improve, I would walk around campus at Carnegie Mellon with headphones on.
Yeah.
And like, be like walking in tempo.
Oh my God, we are the same person.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And like, and like counting along. And I tell my students, they're like, well, don't people look at you weird? And I was like, yes, and I don't care.
That's, once you get over that though, Mark, I think that's like key.
Mm-hmm.
Once you don't care, that's not part of my goal. My goal is this.
Right.
And I know because I showed up and I couldn't do this and I want this and this person says I need to do, that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And I would find my own way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd count 4 in my hand and walk in 5 and 5 versus 4 walking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And again, solfegging in public transport in San Francisco or going and doing my solfege drills that I would just make up for myself while I was riding my bike because that was the other way that I got around.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's crazy. And it would be so mindful that I wouldn't remember riding to where I was going and I would have missed it. And I'd have to double back and go over that hill again because it's San Francisco. Right. And I'd still be solfegging and I'd get there and I'd be like, oh, and I just really honed in on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I got way better. Right. So then I went to the University of Oregon after that, studied with a guy named, San Francisco Conservatory was amazing. I got to study with Conrad Sousa and Ellie Armour and David Conti, and that was amazing. And I got to do new music ensemble stuff in San Francisco, where like the building that I was in had this history for me that was amazing. So Terry Riley and Pauline Oliveros and all these cats, they had this San Francisco Tape Music Center in the building.
Wow.
Right. And John Adams was the new music ensemble conductor. Mm-hmm. I mean, before I was there, right? But I could go in and I could see his notes on a Steve Reich score.
Right.
And that was really intriguing, right? Mm-hmm. So that was super cool. And I felt like I was part of it. And both places that I've mentioned so far would have guest composers coming in. And it was amazing. So I had master classes with all kinds of people. It was great. Or it was just sessions, like people talking like we are.
Right.
And you had that too, right?
Absolutely. I'm thinking about I think the importance of like the historical context of us as musicians compared to people who came before us. And, so seeing, John Adams writing on a score is like, I still get that same feeling when I look in the Bernstein archives and see like a Mahler 1 score that's got Bernstein's marking in it on the New York Philharmonic website.
Yeah.
Or, I will probably never forget the moment in which I saw one of the first, I can't remember exactly what opera it is, but Carnegie Mellon owns one of the first copies of the score of one of Wagner's operas.
Oh, wow.
And it has his signature on it. And it's like, at that time, you're like, these people who aren't real.
Yes.
We're real.
Okay. And that's what that does for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you meet these folks and, they're just like us, they're like, where's the coffee shop? Right?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I think about Franz Strauss. He's like looking for his next cigarette.
Yes. Like, these are just real people with real vices, but also like, real needs, and some of them real hang-ups, and some of them with some of the same voices in their heads.
Right.
How do they overcome those voices that we still hear today? Right. But and that's, they do it. We do it in spite of it sometimes. Mm-hmm. I hope you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And it's something for me like. It's when I finally just accepted that my goal as a musician is to make music for people I care about, with people I care about.
Yes.
And that is my goal. That I actually have stopped thinking about like, the big goal. Like, I mean, maybe when I first started, I was like, I want to be, principal horn of the biggest orchestra.
You want to be the rock star of the horn
world?
Right,
the rock star of the horn world.
Yeah.
And it bred some like unhealthy behaviors in me.
Yeah.
And it really, I think, made me lose sight of, and one thing I've responding to internally to what you're saying about your relationship with Michelle and when that happened within your story. I feel like I missed out on some good years with Rachel where I'm worried so much about this other stuff that in reality doesn't matter. And I'm lucky that when we tell our story, we talk about the years where we're like kind of fighting through. And that's that time where it's just like, I don't live my personal life. I'm just this musician maniacally focused on like the next gig and the next thing and the next thing. And to me, I'm really glad that I've come to this place now. I think it relates to what you're talking about, that thing where it's like, am I a good horn player? To me, I feel like I've got enough proof within this community that I am, and I can be that person.
Absolutely.
I can have these conversations. I can stand for this community and its music making, and it's in the presence of music within this community. And that's more important to me now than being a rock star.
Yeah, for sure. And I also wonder if like other people can see it even before we can.
Yeah.
Like we've already grown into that.
Right.
But we can't see that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No. Well, everybody, this is what it's like to go to Wake with Bill and I. So, anyway, let's get back on your story.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So you're leaving San Francisco, headed to Oregon.
Yeah.
I want to get back down into maybe the weeds a little bit in the sense of like, do you have a career perspective at this point?
Yeah.
Or are you just kind of like, another way I've heard people go about it, it's like, I'm just chasing opportunities. Well, here's an opportunity. Let's do that. But did you see something you were working towards at that point? Or are you still like seeing what's possible? Or both?
I think in some ways I'm still trying to see what's possible. And I don't think I'm chasing as much. I know now more of what I want. At the same time, there keep being these opportunities that pop up around me. It's like, oh, that sounds interesting. But yeah, I liked the idea of being a professor at a university and leading a new music ensemble, and maybe having a church job on the side, that kind of thing. And I mean, interestingly, I don't have a new music ensemble. St. Ambrose isn't a large, big music department that would support something like that. But I can do some things and have done some cool things with new music at St. Ambrose. So the other things are all, that's all there. But yeah, I had a pretty good focus of what I wanted.
Okay.
When I went into the University of Oregon, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a composer at a university or college, leading a new music group, doing that kind of thing. I had no idea the kind of work that would actually take.
Right.
Zero idea.
Yeah, it's really easy sometimes, I think, when we see like our professors, like, God, that must be amazing.
What a great life.
What a great life.
And it is.
No doubt.
And we share now. Yes, yes.
But they don't talk about the faculty meetings.
No.
They don't tell you about the
and there's politics everywhere,
committees.
though.
Yeah,
And there's that. But so I went up to the University of Oregon, and I was a graduate teaching fellow up there. And I aced the GRE. It was one of the last years that they had the music GRE, and I aced it. And one of the graders or readers of that GRE was the head of the theory department. So he's like, "Oh, I know this. Yes, let's have him teach these classes." He didn't know 2 years before that I failed the graduate musicianship portion coming into the San Francisco Conservatory.
You didn't put that as the first line on your bio at that point?
No. And I really tried to get all that I could also out of... So I got all that I could out of Arizona, San Francisco Conservatory, and then Oregon. I mean, I showed up, and I was there, and I would do all the things, and like all the things. And I would also take time to do my stuff. So in Oregon, living in Eugene, Oregon, we had our second child. So I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a graduate student, teaching classes as well, and composing, right?
It's a full plate.
It was, yeah. And then I took a job as a part-time music director as well at a church, because we needed a little bit more income, and that I like that kind of thing. So there it was. And it's not going to bed late because you've got a gig and you get home at 2 a.m. or whatever it is.
Right.
So balancing that was really tough, but I would make it work. It was weird. Back then what I would do is I would do 2 nights no sleep with just cat naps, and then the third night I would sleep.
Wow.
Otherwise I'd be in the studio working. It wasn't healthy, but it's what I did to make it work, and you find ways to do it. Yeah. Right now, I'm actually working on a film score, and I'm almost doing the same thing right now. Just trying to get it done because there's a real deadline.
Right, and it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Well, let's get you from Oregon to the Quad Cities.
Yeah.
What's the story between Oregon and here?
Real fast. We moved back to Arizona.
Okay.
We built a straw bale house in the desert and a detached studio for me, also straw bale. And if you imagine straw bales as Legos, and they're covered with plaster, so they look like an old adobe kind of house in the desert, you have an idea. Beautiful view, but ultimately unsustainable life in Arizona the way that we wanted to live our life.
Okay.
And so after a few years, 5 years living down there, so a few years in the house that we built, with tears in our eyes, we sold the house and departed Tucson and spent a year in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay.
So in Tucson, I was not a professor. I wasn't really teaching. I was in a new music trio. I was at a church leading music, and I was composing or trying to network and compose. Anyway, I started teaching a little bit at a community college there, and so applied to a few positions and got offered a job at what is now Missouri State University in Springfield. Spent a year there, and it was great.
Yeah.
Loved it. Loved the people there. Springfield's this cool town. We didn't spend too much time outside the town. And then, so 17 years ago, so that was 18 years ago, 17 years ago, I had 3 job offers, and I took the one at St. Ambrose. I took the one here at St. Ambrose because, there's the Figge Art Museum, the Putnam Museum, there's the Quad City Ballet, there's the Quad City Symphony, there's the Quad City Botanical Center, there's at that time fledgling the River Music Experience. There were all these things culturally going on. There's a airport. There's a huge river that everybody knows. There's all this stuff. I mean, it's like a thriving place, right? The other 2 places were not that. And so I thought, okay. I thought we'd be here for 2 years.
Right.
And then move on to something else. And here we are.
I think it's a funny thing to like let people who are not musicians know that some folks, when you talk about this idea that like, I would say when I won my position here with the Quad City Symphony, I was going to be here for 2-3 years.
Yes.
Figure out how to play in an orchestra, learn how to manage a horn section, and that I was still focused on that next step.
Yeah.
Which would have been, keep auditioning until the next thing comes. It wasn't like a value assessment on where I currently was, or that, being here in the Quad Cities was not a place I wanted to be. But the career path of a musician is always what's next, what's next, what's next. It often feels that way. And so you step into these things both with both feet in the water, but you're still with your eye on the next thing.
Absolutely.
And so like the funny thing to me is that the amount of people who start their story about the place that they are and the place that they love starts with, I only thought I was going to be here 2 years, but, and then, it's a series of many stories, but like, so what my experience in the Quad Cities was instant love. How about you?
It was not instant love.
Okay. All right.
It was not. However, it was like, there's so many possibilities here, greater than what I would think of.
Right.
The sum is far greater than the individual parts. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's great.
Right. It makes it a weird place in a while.
Yeah. But I, in my first week, we had barely moved into the house. I drove myself over to the Quad City Symphony office and introduced myself. Hi, I'm Bill Campbell.
You've been waiting for this moment. Yes. Blow the doors open.
But I mean, I told them part of the reason I chose St. Ambrose University is because there's a symphony here. Mm-hmm. That's a big deal for me. I want all these cultural things, but I also want, all the things that back then would make me feel comfortable and good and solid as a dad.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, it checked all the boxes.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I was allowing myself to fall in love with a place.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I think for me it was, you said you came 18 years ago?
18 or 17, depending on... Yeah.
So I've been around for 12, and I describe the first 2 or 3 years when I wasn't living here full time. I was just coming in.
Yes.
It's like that first year we couldn't find a restaurant to eat at on Sunday evening.
Oh,
man. It's like things were closed on the weekends. Like we didn't have, like I could list off 20 places I probably go to weekly that didn't exist then.
Well, we needed you here.
Well, no. That's not what I mean. But it's just like I came at an exciting time because there was just so much stuff coming down, so many new places to go. But
yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
yeah.
Talk to me about what, those years of teaching. I mean, you have some experience. You had been doing TA. You had taught community college. You had your year in Missouri.
Yeah.
Tell us about those young professorial years, the trials and errors of being a good professor. Because I know if we are the same person, you probably walked to that first class like, hey, everybody, I'm going to blow your minds.
Well, yeah, I was also pretty nervous.
Yeah.
And more organized I had more things than I could ever cover. Mm-hmm. Like ever.
Right.
And when I was a graduate teaching fellow, I wasn't trying to blow anybody's minds.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Mm-hmm.
One of the classes I had to teach was that graduate remedial ear training. Mm-hmm. They had me teaching that class.
Right. That you had just taken a couple of
years prior. To other grad students.
Yeah.
They're my age. I'm a composer. I need them to play my music. Am I going to fail these people? Right? No. Mm-mm. But I'm going to help them and try to, So there was that. And when I started teaching again at the community college, it was just I'd never been in a community college class. I didn't know what to expect.
Right. And
so I was nervous about that, and I was trying to again help them understand some things. And I had a pretty good outline of what I wanted to do, and I walked in and I think it went well. But afterward, I went home and I was like, well, Michelle, I think it went well. First I did this and then this. And I'm sure she was like tuning me out after 3 seconds. Just let him talk. But, it's that same thing that we do now after a performance. Oh, man, yeah, and then this happened. I still do that now. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. But but I'm a tweaker. Like, I'm still trying to teach the perfect class.
Yeah.
Man. I am.
Yeah, I was just talking to Mindy Heisel about this yesterday. About I'm a young broadcaster now here at WVIK,
yes, you are.
And so just trying to soak up all the knowledge I can get from her. And we were talking about, I think, a thing that the two of us share, and I think the three of us share within the context of this conversation, is that, like, you show up every day just to try to do a little better,
Absolutely.
And, like, the minute that you come in and you're like, I'm just executing this excellent plan, there's nothing left to learn, you should probably find another field to be in.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, like, that is an interesting thing where we have to live this duality. Well, especially as a performer, where you're going out and you're just like, I don't know, the thing that drives me is, like, in my mind, I have to say, you're the best horn player in the world, go get it.
Mm-hmm.
but knowing, like in my heart of hearts, that I will forever be a student.
Absolutely.
That there's always something left to learn, and it almost like creates some frustration sometimes, where it's just like after a performance, like you feel like you get some insight a couple months later that makes you better, and you want to go back. You're like, I want to play that piece again. I want to do that again.
Yes.
And so I mean, to me, that just, I think that fuels internal drive, as a musician, but also like in my work when I'm feeling like I'm a fish out of water in something. It's like just try to feel a little bit more. Feel a little better about what you're doing each day, and try to be a little bit better each day.
And thank goodness we do get better.
Right. If we didn't get better,
that'd be a different end of that chapter.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and also thank goodness that we don't play the same gig night after night.
Yeah.
Same music.
Right.
Exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody who does that. That would be
a difficult thing, I think, for myself to handle, for sure.
I would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's not within me. I can't play the same piece the same way twice.
For sure.
Well,
let's talk about like present day Bill.
Yeah.
And
who is that?
It's like I made a joke with somebody about Inside the Actors Studio. Do you remember that show?
No,
with James Lipton.
No, I never saw that show.
Anyway, it's fantastic.
Sorry,
but you at least were in a time in which you could have seen it, and I didn't realize that I was talking to somebody who was like so young they couldn't have possibly known what I was talking about. But anyway, he always used to do these things. He's like, I want to speak to the actor Bill.
Nice.
Like, right.
Nice.
So let's talk about your film composing.
Okay.
And I think that it's something that, at least to my awareness of your activities, it's been something that's been really happening over the past couple of years for you. And I want to hear how you got into it.
Yeah.
I think people are interested to know actually what is the process for writing music for a movie. So just talk a little bit about all that for us.
Well, I'm in the deep dark throes of it right now, and I've got to finish it in a week, and I'm not close enough to sleep, and so it's just the reality. It's what it's going to be.
Right. Well, thank you for taking
honestly,
an hour or
I was
so
about
to come
to
over
say,
here.
I was like, I shouldn't have said yes, but you're my friend,
yes.
and we like talking, and so it's good. And then the next thing I have to do is write a choir piece. I get to write a choir piece. It's amazing. And then after that, I've got a project plus an album again to do. And then, I mean, it's never ending. So why not? Why not today, right? Yeah. So this is great. But the film music stuff, there are people who make a whole career out of it. And I didn't. But I do it. And, I mean, here I am. I've been to the Oscars. I've had two films that I've worked on go to the Oscars. I'm Emmy nominated as film score, but I enjoy it, and I think that what I've done is good. You know, and that's the important thing, right? And I didn't set out saying, "Oh, I want these awards," and none of us did. Right. But along the way, somebody was like, "Well, let's see how this would help." But the film score stuff. Well, when I was a student at University of Arizona, I met a film director, and I'd always kind of thought it would be fun to compose some music. And we tried, and the film wasn't finished. I finished a bunch of the music, but not all of it, because the film didn't get done. So there were no opportunities like that at San Francisco Conservatory, but at University of Oregon, there is a great theater department. And so I got to work with a couple directors there who needed a composer to write some music for stage productions. So this is music underlay, is what often, you go to a live play and you hear music. And so I wrote some for that. But one of the shows that I did, I said, let's do this as if it was a film. And I'll be the film composer and you be the film director. And I'm going to sit there with a stopwatch and I'm going to be at rehearsals with your actors. And I'm going to time it. I'm going to write down when this happens, the pacing and everything. And I'm going to compose music that goes along with it. And that's what I did. I reserved the hall, the main recital hall. And I got an okay to record it with the recording engineer. And I wrote all the parts and I did all that kind of stuff. And that's what I did. It was great. It was a great experience. And then I did another one like that, and then another one like that, and then I got asked to do a film like that, and then I got it. So that's just how it happened. And I would put these out there on my website, some samples of things, and people would like Garcia Lorca's Blood Wedding Theater music, and my name would pop up, and so people would buy that music for a few years from me, like,
Wow.
you know. And then they would ask me, "Well, we got this production. Can you do something for this too?" Right? And that's the way you do
Kinda
stuff.
get into
you
it,
you put yourself out at least a little bit, and then that becomes your network, and then it continues to build out from there. That's just like what everybody's experienced. I'm not the best networker outside of my area where I live. But I'm not bad. I'm not bashful, but you know.
Right.
So these people I've just kept in contact with, and one of them is this lauded documentary filmmaker that I've written music for all of his like signature films that he's worked on. He's worked on others, and he's worked with other musicians, and even used what we call library music, which is pre-composed music that people pull from another spot. But yeah, and then there's other people that I've done some music for too. But and I've got a studio in my house, and I most of the music that I do on my own. I play the instruments if I need to, or I bring in some musicians and I have them play from a part that has a bunch of different things, and then in my studio I will tweak all of it.
Right.
And it may not be recognizable at all from what that person played.
Right.
So I take all the stuff that I learned in my electronic music class and that experimental and electronic music book that my dad bought me when I was 15.
Wow.
And I apply all that stuff to what I'm doing now. You know, it's like I've been on this trajectory forever. And the score that I'm writing right now is only electronic. It's really dark and crazy, horrific. And I mean, I'm not that person when you meet me in real life. It's like,
Right.
But the music and what the film needs is this other thing, so it takes a certain, I think, person to understand what the film needs, and you've got to be able to communicate emotion through music and do it quickly,
Right.
And then move on and get out of the way. I don't live in LA. I love all the people who do and can make it work for themselves. That's amazing. But just my connections before and while I've lived here, I've been able to help that thing grow. And it's only been, here we are in 2023, it's really only been 4 years since the notoriety built.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm curious. This is for me, and I hope there's some others out there that have this question as well. What is the first thing you do when you're starting a new film project? For me, it's hard to conceptualize what that might look like because on my end as a performer, I've played these movie scores to film, like with the Quad City Symphony, or I hear these soundtracks, or I see the movies, and they're just so huge. The project seems so huge.
Oh, well, you've played music of John Williams for
Right.
the Harry Potter stuff,
Yes.
right? Yeah, those are massive.
Right.
And honestly, what I do is not that massive.
But it still starts with the first step.
Yes, it does.
What is that first step?
I try to make sure that I've asked the director the right questions that can get me to the point where I know what the director is wanting to convey in the film at that time. So we still talk about the film. It's not the physical thing anymore, and it's not just what's up there on the screen. It's the overall piece of work that we call the film. What are we trying to convey at the beginning, the middle, and an end? In this moment, when this happens, when I can see right there that turn is probably gonna is happening, but before that, do we want to hint at that? What kind of I think that foreshadowing would be nice here. So we do a spotting session actually, where we go through the different spots where music is going to exist, and I get to ask all these questions, and often there's more to it than just that. Right. And I'll say, well, I'm thinking about this for this kind of an idea. This musical character could really portray this abstract idea or this person or something else. And I'll also ask the director if they've got a sound in their head. Are you thinking full orchestra? Did you invite me to do that? Or are you thinking small Are you thinking, abstract, totally contemporary, weird stuff? What are you hearing here? And from one director, I'll often get, I don't want piano. I know you're a pianist, but I want Bill the composer.
Okay. Yes. I want to speak to Bill, the composer.
Exactly. And it's funny because it goes back to So, and then I'll start playing around in the sound world that I eventually start calling my palette.
Right.
A visual artist has the palette that they paint with, and they've got their colors on their palette. And so I've got my instrument or sound palette, and that's what I use. And again, that's a very kind of electronic music composer kind of way to think about it, I think. So I'm thinking timbrally and texturally, as well as what that instrument can do and how it can be played. Right. And those are the things that get me going. And then I'll improvise through the scene if I've got a scene.
Right.
Sometimes I get some information before I get the film. And I'll improvise through it, and I might send the idea to the director and say, hey, am I close yet? Mm-hmm. Maybe. Let's see as we keep going. And then I'll get, today, what we get, and for a while now, just QuickTime files with what's called time code. And on the bottom of the screen where you've got the video, you've got, it's not real time, it's time code, which runs at a different rate and frames per second, different frames per second for time code. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what I'm looking at and I'm tracking, and I've synced that up with my software on my computer, and it all works together. And then I'm able to improvise through that. Okay. And when I get to a place that I'm more or less satisfied, or satisfied enough with what I've got, I'll send it as a sketch.
Okay. So sometimes it almost seems as if that what you just described is like you are performing the score live, improvised to film at that point.
Yeah, and I'm not alone in that, and that's what. But sometimes I'll also sit down. So sometimes I've been asked to write some more conventional or traditional music, and I'll sit down and I'll write a theme, right? And I'll be at my desk and I'll write out the theme and what I'm hearing. I'll go to the piano, make sure that it works as music in the physical space. Right. And then I'll orchestrate it out on paper. Mm-hmm. And then I'll go into my notation program and I'll notate out what I said. And there you go. And we've got it, and it goes from there. But those are two different approaches that I've taken. I don't love one more than the other. Okay. It comes from the same spot. Right. Look, man, I'm always improvising. I'm always thinking. I'm always wondering, what if this sound is like this? What would this be like, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
So you're the kid in the classroom when I go to show my horn off, and they're like, what would happen if you took this part off? How'd it sound then?
Yes.
I love that. And I have to admit that as soon as you said theme, all I wanted to do was sing the bum, 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 beam.
That's just a great theme.
2001 man. Space Odyssey,
that was
right?
Close Encounters of the Third
Kind.
Kind.
Close Encounters.
That was also a John Williams thing, though. Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And I need to get a Rolodex of Bill themes in my head now, too.
Oh, no.
So, let's start to wrap up our conversation with, like, looking back at this story that we've just kind of gone through. What do you feel like you've learned from that story? And, like, what might we as, because listeners, like, come away with what we can expect, or what does Bill want to do with the next part of his career in life, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so what have I learned from this story, and where am I going? Yeah, thanks. That's
sorry,
not a big
bud.
question at all. You're not sorry. I think, gosh, I knew that I wanted to just do music so early, and along the way there was a voice that questioned that, and I was able, because of people around me, to lessen that questioning voice. the doomsayer, in my head, enough to get stuff done. And I love that. And I love being in those moments where it's all just about the music or whatever the moment is that I'm in, right? That's living,
right,
for me. And for me, music expresses living. And I know for other people, it's other things. It's food. It's art, visual art. It's something else, right? Or bike riding, whatever it is that it's their passion. That's awesome. But I mean, finding that and doing that and giving yourself to that is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. I think that's cool that I was able to do that when I was younger. That's yeah. Do that more.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly like what I'm looking for, is that what we can learn from your story or from that is that, the goal is to just be able to mold your life and give your life to things that you love and that you're passionate about.
Yeah. And then it's genuine.
It really is.
And then you don't even have to ask the question. It's like, yeah, this is what I do.
Right. And then, and it's just like people can, I don't know. Being your friend and seeing, like, we have these two experiences in modern world where it's like you and I we meet up in physical spaces. Yes. And often those physical space meetings have no goal.
Right.
And
Thank
we
goodness.
have gone from having, this is a actual business meeting and we have accomplished a couple things, but then we always find ourselves talking about something totally random and weird.
Thank goodness.
Yes. So like from that perspective, it's like, and then I see like in the social media world and in your professional world and all the things that you release, it's like, nothing surprises me in the best ways, because it's like whatever you come up with always feels like uniquely Bill.
Oh, cool.
And
I'm glad.
And I, for one, am excited to keep seeing Bill and to keep hearing
sweet.
Bill and being a
Likewise.
part of Bill's world.
I'm glad that I'm part of Mark's world too. It's good. This is a mutual affection society here.
Right, for sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, man.
And
Great
maybe
talking
in
with you.
25 years when we're super old, we can do it again and talk about the next 25 years.
Yes, sounds great. Whatever podcast will be then.
Right, exactly.
Nice.
Thanks, man. Because is produced by Mark Zyla and Jaron Michelle in the studios of WVIK Quad Cities NPR. Thank you for listening to this episode. Because I read Because by Mo Willems, illustrated by Amber Wren, I wanted to learn the becauses of people I admire. Do me a favor and thank someone in your own Because story, and join us next time on Because.